Dove, and today I'll be showing you tips to improve your anatomy and poses. I recently had a few friends request an anatomy and pose tutorial, but I'll be diving deeper into anatomy in another video. Thank you so much for your support, especially from my art mutuals, and let's get into it. So starting off, we have proportions of the body. I draw the head, and then I use the guidelines for the side of the face for the sides of the shoulders, a circle for the ribs, define that rib cage a little more. That brings us to the torso, and I like to mark the crotch a little down before connecting it with the triangle. So circles for any sort of joints. Next, I use the ratio I had for the torso to the shoulders, and then use that for the hips to the ankles. So keep in mind that females tend to have a curvier body and males a boxier frame. So when drawing the arms, the elbow is to the waist and the wrist should be to the crotch. I like to simplify hands with a little oval shape. And always don't draw super long arms. So that's how I achieved the anatomy for these two poses. So moving on, we have stylizing the anatomy of your characters. I won't be diving deep into anatomy in this one, but I'll be going further in a different video. So usually I use that ratio for all of my characters. So I've seen a lot of people stylize their limbs in different ways, such as making them thinner or curvier. I would definitely recommend playing around with these to add more diversity to your characters. You can always take advantage and exaggerate these ratios to fit your style better. A lot of things in people's artwork are stiff poses, something I see often, such as the head facing forward a lot and the body is just in one position where there's no dynamicness to the pose or anything lively. As a beginner, I struggled with this a lot as well, mostly because I didn't notice this and how it could really change my artwork. Even if your piece has very good perspective or detailed rendering, there's always a limit to how much that can make your piece appealing. Being able to create lively and dynamic portraits or pieces can easily elevate your skill as an artist. As a self-taught artist, I learned mostly off of YouTube, Pinterest, etc. And I saw this tip called line of action, where you take a very dynamic line and create the shape of the spine. This gives you a really good starting point for where you start to build your pose up. Now, not everyone may be drawing full bodies for every single piece, therefore next tip will definitely be helpful for those who focus mainly on portraits. But here, I'm just demonstrating how starting with a dynamic line or shape can jumpstart you to building a more dynamic pose. Sometimes I'll even add some perspective to the line of action, but I'll discuss perspective in a different video. A few of my portrait drawings employ this strategy for drawing the head and shoulders. So these are two lines, much like the line of action, where they're curved and dynamic to follow the eye line and shoulder line. This gives a little more flow to the head and shoulders, much as where someone is posing for a photo, or really helps with how the character looks in the portrait. When I learned this trick, it greatly improved how I drew heads and shoulders and how I draw busts now. But this is just an easy way to vary your poses in every drawing, especially when I did a bunch of portraits to practice. Now it's so much easier after you've had some practice. So studying poses, I like to break down the shapes first, as you've probably seen a lot. I use shapes to cover the body, the joints, and give me a good idea of how the pose is constructed. With this model here, you can see the proportions I used from my earlier base, and I'm pointing out the line of action and these shoulder and hip lines here. Creating exaggerated and dynamic poses with these tips, you would still prefer to understand how the body bends and the limits of it, as there are still limitations to the exaggeration of poses. Another thing with drawing full body poses or compositions, which I like to do a lot, I like to focus on the different shapes of the body and how it affects the overall vibe of the piece, as well as adding in different shapes in the empty space, such as triangles you can see along the sides, between her legs and her arm, and between her ponytail. It helps while making a pose in a composition that you go watch some other videos about how to create a well-balanced composition. And that's it for studies. Next, I'll be drawing a pose using these tips. So I started off using the head, shoulder, and hip lines and the line of action and quickly sketched out a pose that I thought would be interesting. So here is me deciding on where I should place the legs, and I decided on a little bit of perspective. I usually sit like this, it's so comfy. And so this is just a character looking up at the sky, possibly sitting on a bench. And normally I would use a pose like this to create a scene of maybe a character sitting outside and adding a small background with some dynamic lighting as well. As you can see, I'm just cleaning up the sketch and adding some clothes to the character to give it a little more refined look. And here's the finished example. Thank you so much for supporting me to the end and watching this video all the way. I hope you enjoyed it, and so sorry for my terrible voice and the quality of the audio, since I recorded this over a few days and my voice was probably changing all throughout. Please comment down below what you would like to see more of, and I promise my next one will definitely have much better quality. If you like this video, please consider liking or subscribing, and I'll see you next time.